from ScrumMaster.com, and today I wanted to talk about how to introduce a new team to Scrum. When you start working with a new team, sometimes you might find out that not everyone knows what Scrum is, what your role as a Scrum Master is, and what do you expect from them as team members. So it is good to run a short workshop or just a training session to talk about Scrum and Agile in general that will help you going forward working with this team, because everyone will know what you're talking about when you're referring to Scrum, Scrum values, practices, and other elements. Let's have a quick look into the Scrum Guide. As the Scrum Guide says, Scrum Master is responsible for promoting and supporting Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. Scrum Master do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theory, practices, rules, and values. And that's why running a short session with your team around Scrum is a perfect idea when you're joining a new team. So let me show you how I usually run an introduction to Scrum session. Whenever you start talking about Scrum, sometimes you will find that people think that Agile and Scrum are the same things, as well as different practices that are usually used in Scrum teams, such as planning poker, is kind of part of Scrum, even though it is not. That is why I feel that it is extremely important to show what the differences are between Agile, Scrum, and different practices. So I always start with the small pyramid. I always talk about Agile as the top of the pyramid. Agile is a mindset, a different way of working versus traditional ways of working. And that's why here I say Agile is a mindset. Now, right below the mindset, we have things like Scrum, Kanban, or extreme programming. These are frameworks. This is a good way to show the difference between general view on how we work and different frameworks that help us become agile. Now, below, you have various practices. For example, different practices that are not necessarily linked to any specific framework. Those are just good practices that have been proven to work with these frameworks to help people understand the rules of these frameworks in order to become more agile. I find that this simple pyramid helps everyone understand what the difference is between different things, and also sometimes uncover misconceptions about the fact that planning poker is not necessarily part of Scrum. So while starting with this pyramid is a good thing when you're running a specifically Scrum-related session, it's also good to have a separate session about Agile, but this is not something that I'm going to cover today. Once the understanding between Agile, Scrum, and different practices is there, I start to talk about Scrum, but not about the rules or elements of Scrum. I start to talk about empiricism, as well as Scrum values. And here's what I do to explain this concept. I draw a little house. And I say at the top of it is Scrum. Scrum stands on 3 pillars. These 3 pillars are defined by empiricism, what Scrum really is based on. So the 3 pillars are transparency. The second pillar is inspection. And the last pillar is adaptation. In order for the whole structure to be strong, we need trust. Empiricism is based on trust to enable transparency, inspection, and adaptation. In order for the trust to be built and continuously exist, that's where the Scrum values come to mind, and that's why Scrum values are so important. And this is where I put all of the Scrum values right underneath trust to say this is what is fueling trust in the team. And when I talk about values, I'm trying to give specific examples about what this means, what kind of behavior these values encourage and show up when we follow these values. This is the small representation that I talk about of Scrum before I start jumping into the actual framework. And after I talked about what the differences between the framework, mindset, and the practices, as well as what are the underlying values and principles of Scrum, I talk about Scrum Elements and the way sprint works and what kind of roles and people are involved in making this happen. So this is the diagram I use when I start to talk about Scrum and how I explain the elements, roles, as well as artifacts that happen during the Scrum framework. And I usually have a stack of sticky notes with me that have all the important elements and things that I want to highlight. I will not talk about all the details of what I say. You can always look at the Scrum Guide to understand how you can talk about these elements and what are the most important things to say. But I will just quickly show you how I usually uncover each element as I talk about it. And this is basically the Scrum framework. Introduction to Scrum can be a very presentation-heavy topic, so it is important to have a check-in at the end of the session to make sure people actually understood different elements of Scrum, values, and other things that you talked about. I usually like to have an exercise at the end, though I would encourage having other exercises in the middle of the session to kind of grab people's attention. And this is the exercise where I talk about the differences between the Scrum roles that allow people to see what is really expected from them, from the product owner role, from the Scrum Master role, and development team member role. And it will also uncover a lot of misconceptions about who is responsible for what. I'll just show you what I'm talking about, what the exercise is about, but you can also download the full exercise with the correct answers from my website, and I'll put in the link in the description, or it will be somewhere here, or if you're at scrummaster.com website, you will find it right below the video. What I usually do, I prepare a poster, and the poster will have 4 columns. And then I will have various responsibilities of the different roles of the Scrum team that I think usually are misunderstood, and I list them right here. For example, who is responsible for second team's performance? Very usual misconceptions about this part, especially coming from traditional way of working with people and traditional way of management. When you ask this question, who is responsible for tracking team's performance? Most of the time you will have the answer, it's the Scrum Master's responsibility. Good point to have a learning and coaching opportunity to talk about why this is incorrect and explain why it's the development team. If you want to learn more about this specific exercise, the answers, what are the different questions I ask, do download the poster from the website. It's available for free. Those are the 4 things that I do in a Scrum overview. It usually takes an hour to go through all these topics. It opens up a lot of great discussions and allows you to focus people's attention on what's important and not just the process that they usually think about when they think about Scrum. I hope you learned something new today, and this is something that you will be able to use in your daily work as a Scrum Master. Now, I'm actually very interested in knowing, how do you teach Scrum? What are different exercises or topics do you cover when you're doing a Scrum overview? Do you do some games? Do you use Lego? Let me know in the comments below, and let's share some knowledge about how do you teach Scrum and how do you spread the knowledge about the framework in such a way that people are willing to learn more. I hope to see you next time. Cheers and Scrum on! This is a new type of video that I've never done before. I decided to focus it a little bit more on the Scrum Master role and how to be a Scrum Master, and very practical advice about how I'm doing it. And I just wanted to know, what do you think? So let me know, shoot me a comment, an email, just let me know what you think about this type of video. Do you want to see more of this kind of videos or not? Maybe I'll do another video of the same type next time.